China's role in Africa is highly controversial. Some see China as a neo-imperialist power, others as Africa's economic savior. Yet, the real story of China in Africa seems much more complex and contradictory than the criticism by some Western scholars implies, or the compliments from African elites and governments suggest. To find out what young Africans really feel and think about Chinese engagement on their continent, the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung recently gathered 46 young leaders from 8 East African countries for a 3-day seminar on China in Africa.
We need to have a bigger picture and see that we need also to manage our countries and what.
So we asked, what do young East Africans think and feel about the 1 million Chinese citizens on their continent, and where do they encounter them?
When I hear about China in my country, I think about substandard goods. When we hear about China in our country, we know efficiency when it comes to infrastructure development.
You encounter with Chinese every day in your life, in simple details of your life. If I turn my t-shirt, there is a mark made in China or made in PRC. When you walk, it's a Chinese built, you know. Even in your house, the window frames, the doors, most of these stuffs are imported from China.
First comes as opportunists, counterfeits, fake products, and another thing, people are very corrupt and selfish in mind.
China is playing a major role in our country. When you say China is my country, it looks like good development in my country.
I hear them as business people who know nothing about my culture and about me, but they are ready to do business with me, regardless of the frontiers. Any business, I mean any business. Yes, including even cleaning my shoes.
China have been supported Sudan, that they provide loans and they import weapons to Sudan. Even the projects that have been done and the infrastructures have been done in Sudan, she mainly do them for the government and not as much as for the sake of the people of Sudan. They are totally have a nice romantic relations with our government.
That is specifically for Ethiopia. That's an ecosystem of Ethiopia.
There is good and bad in these emotional reactions and random encounters. But with China-African trade having doubled over the last 7 years and the promise of another $60 billion on Chinese aid, African governments have to find a better way to balance this still uneven relationship. What should be done?
It's just important that these young African leaders from 8 countries have been brought together. They have shared, compared notes, and have had recommendations. These recommendations are the ones that we hope they are going to be able to implement. To implement them, however, they will need to do further research on many of these issues, because one of the things I realized from the conference is that we touched in passing transiently on many of the issues.
I think the enthusiasm and the criticism about China, it comes from lack of awareness, lack of understanding about this civilization that has a 3,000-year history. And with deeper understanding of what China is, where it comes from, its cultural norms, it might help dispel, the stereotypes and misperceptions that we have about China.
The missing link is that we as Africa, as a continent, or African countries individually, they don't have a strategy to deal with China. We need to craft a strategy for engaging with the Chinese.
When Africans do business with the Chinese, it should be good for both sides. But what does this business relationship look like in practice?
Chinese are good partners, and I like them. It's only about our systems which are failing them. One is our systems needs to protect us from fake products. And as people who are investors, they shouldn't try to compete with the local products. So one preacher had gone to preach to Chinese about Jesus. Then he asked the Chinese if he knows Jesus. And then the Chinese said, no, I don't know Jesus, but if you give me one sample, I can make you 1,000 of them. So that gives you their impression, how they think about the production.
In the ministries, you can find 8 to 9 of them just roaming, just to talk to the minister or someone of importance. I'm a businessman, so it's a little bit difficult competing with 8 Chinese guys from one company or from different companies going after the same thing.
If these are the challenges in the economic relationship, what can China and what can Africa do about them?
Chinese are good people, but the problem is just with the government. You know, the kinds of agreements they sign, they are not good agreements. We do want development, but not at the expense of our human rights, not at the expense of our dignity.
China needs to start reflecting on how best can it, partner with Tanzanians. People are not very happy with Chinese products. Not only just the Chinese to think about it, but we as Tanzania, we as a country, what are we doing about it? We have the resources. The Chinese need us more than we need them now, because what are they bringing? Are they transferring technology to us? Are they, bringing right skills to our people? Are they bringing the right expertise?
New scramble for Africa is coming because, the West is highly interested with Africa because the fruit of China has shown them a lot. So the East is highly interested. So the big elephants are coming into African land again after the colonization. So if we are not strategic enough, then these 2 big elephants, from the East and the West, they're going to have some chemistry in our land. So at the end, whenever the elephants fight, then the grass is the one which is going to be affected.
So what do? We check on our education system, we check on our policies, we check on our laws and regulations, and we make reforms to suit our demand.
At the end, there was a consensus among the East African young leaders that African citizens have to take their own governments to account by asking for transparency and for the strict application of local laws and regulations when dealing with Chinese partners.
You cannot blame China, you cannot blame the West. You blame yourself for coming up with wrong contracts. The good thing about this workshop is that it prepares the youth to be critical-minded about what is going on in their country. It is for them now to walk the talk.